In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Monday, December 26th, and this is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast. Merry Christmas, everybody, and welcome to the show. Sal, Merry Christmas, buddy. How are you?
Merry Christmas to you, Kevin. I am good, thank you. How was your Christmas?
It was
now. Quick question before you actually answer that.
Yeah.
Was this your daughter's first Christmas?
It was my daughter's first Christmas.
There you go.
If you remember correctly, last year she was born on December 29th. We actually went to the hospital on December 28th, so it's coming up shortly that we spent the day and a half in the hospital. And I actually won a fantasy football trophy and the birth of my daughter on the same day because it was Monday into Tuesday. So it was a banner day for me last year.
Better year than this year.
That's we had a good Christmas so far, and she's one now, so that's good. And we don't have to spend it in a hospital, which is even better. So yes, there are pluses and minuses to both. My Christmas was good, Sal. Thank you for asking. We had a good time. She, 1-year-olds, they don't really know what's going on. So she ripped.
Did she break anything?
She didn't. She did break one item. One gift from Uncle Sal. Thank you very much. So for those of you listening, Sal was very nice when he was on vacation in Orlando at Disney World, vacationing with his family, leaving Steve and I here to run the ship. He purchased each of us a ornament for the tree for our kids. And my daughter, we opened it. I let her hold it so we could take a picture of it and send it to Sal, and she subsequently dropped it, and it broke. So
I think that's awesome. I think that she's just basically right off the top saying, I don't like New York.
Yeah, screw New York.
And this is what I think of your ornament.
That's right, yeah, that's basically it.
I think she's into family business.
How was your Christmas, Sal?
My Christmas was good. Christmas started for me on Saturday, obviously, because we do Christmas Eve with the in-laws, so I missed the second half of football that day. I guess you could say I missed it. I got to watch the Jets game because we're in New York and my in-laws don't have anything other than regular TV. So
you mean
that's kind of like
game?
Yeah, that's right. They were playing the Patriots. So I did get to see some good players, but it's almost like not watching football when you get stuck watching just a Jet game.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is very tough. And I got home and caught the second half of the night game of Cincinnati and the Texans, and watched Andy Dalton do all he can with absolutely no weapons, only to watch the kicker Bullock miss and just break his heart. I felt so bad for Andy Dalton watching that, because this guy literally has Jeremy Hill didn't make it out of the first quarter in that game.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, and I think he got benched too. We'll get into that, but I don't even think he was hurt. I think he just got benched. That was a tough day for Andy Dalton for sure.
My Christmas, just to finish up, my Christmas was excellent. Very good year.
Good.
My kids a lot older than Kevin's. My youngest is 12, and then I got a 15 and a 17-year-old. And, it's different now. It's no more toys, and they're actually excited to get clothes and money and stuff like that. So, but overall, a really, really good weekend, and nothing but great things to say.
Excellent. It's funny that, normally I'm obviously a big fan of the Red Zone channel. I love it. Being in fantasy football and talking about fantasy football and playing fantasy football, you kind of have to love it. But I will say, for Patriots games, I almost always exclusively watch the game, right? As I'm sure you would do with the Raiders too, if you can, right?
Correct, yes.
So, but this particular weekend, for some reason, Verizon Fios has been screwing up lately, and when I sat down to watch the game, about 3/4 of the way through the game, the channel that the game's on froze. So I could no longer watch the Patriots game, which was fine because it was out of hand, as I'm sure you know.
It was over in the first quarter. Yeah. They could have frozen up in the first quarter. You would have been good.
It would have been fine. So, but I got to watch the Red Zone there and switch back, and it's weird to me watching the Red Zone while your own team's playing. It's a little different. But you must deal with that constantly.
Yeah, years ago, I used to have the DirecTV package, and I used to be able to watch all the Raider games. But a few years back, I don't know if it was mainly because of fantasy, but I switched cable systems because it was just less expensive, and went with just the Red Zone. So sometimes it's tough. You're waiting for your team to come back up. You know they're on a drive. You know they're driving to score, and it may have already happened, and Red Zone is just delaying it. So it's not always easy doing that. So
I got a friend who's a huge Patriots. One of the guys I share the tickets with, the season tickets with, actually. And but beyond the fact that he's a Patriots fan, he always says that he can't get into Red Zone because he needs to be able to get into the flow of the game. Have you ever heard that? You have an issue at all?
My best friend is a huge Giants fan, and I used to invite him over. And so let's go back to when I had DirecTV, and you can watch any game you want. And I would have multiple TVs set up. I would roll the TV in from the bedroom. I'd pull the TV in over here, and I'd have multiple TVs going on. And he said, I can't come by. It's too confusing. I can't focus on my team. I got to focus on my team. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I can't come. So he calls me up now. He travels. He's a musician. He travels all over the country constantly. And he'll call me up, and he'll be like, did you see what just happened in the game? I'm like, no, I'm not watching the Giants game. I got Red Zone on, and he cannot comprehend it. So
yeah, it's tough. Yeah. Oh, all right. But so anyway, we will get into all the games. We're going to roll through them pretty quickly because most of you have either won your championships or lost your championships at this point. We'll try to do a little analysis for those of you doing 2-week championships or who, for some reason, have a week 17 championship. But so we'll get to those in a minute. But first, Sal, we should probably run through the FLAFFL leagues, and since they're over now, or I guess almost over, given that there's a game tonight. I think most of them are decided, though. Correct?
I would say it's kind of down the middle between championships and relegations. What have and have not been decided. We have not mentioned that Steve is not here yet.
Oh yeah, hey Steve. Steve's not here.
So Steve, some of you guys know that Steve was basically a cellar dweller all year in FLAFFL, the Premier FLAFFL League, the top league, and he was fighting this week with P. Dolo for relegation. The loser was going down to FLAFFL Junior, and the winner was going to get to stay. So since Steve lost, we don't have him here tonight.
Yeah, we just kicked him off the podcast. We figure if you can't even stay in FLAFFL, that's it.
So the truth of the matter is, Steve is up. Steve is winning 124.8 to 108.3. Steve is done, and Pidolo has just Matt Prater to go. So barring one of the greatest kicking games in the history of the NFL, Steve, which, by the way, if Steve was here, he would say, you know I'm going to lose. You know that's going to go.
Yeah, that would be the way the season goes.
So hopefully Steve is spared that embarrassment.
Yeah, I would say I told him, and obviously that would just be the ultimate just knockdown for good. I mean, you can't come back from that. I think I would quit fantasy football at that. Get relegated because of a kicker scoring 17 points. That's tough.
And then we got to go over to the FLAFFL Championship, and that had our own Wally Central, Kevin Cotillo in there. And before Kevin gets to what he'll say about what went on there, I will say this: Eagles Nation, who was our champion, his first name is Salmon. His team went off, and I would think it would be hard pressed for anyone to have beat him. You could have started probably additional players in your lineup this week, but he's projected to finish with 150. He's got a 120 and change right now. So, Kev, tell us what did and didn't go right for you in this championship.
Yeah, I mean, for one, the biggest thing that didn't go right is I came up against his team, who just went absolutely house. Just all his players had great games. The nail in the coffin, I think, on his side for me was that that last minute deactivation of Doug Martin forced him to put Doug Baldwin in the lineup in place of him, which, as we'll get to in a minute, when we go through the game. Doug Baldwin had a great game. Doug Martin, who's been playing terribly since he came back from injury, that was a big swing there. So that was number one for me. On my side, I switched out Adam Thielen, who obviously just led the league in points this week so far. He's had an over a 30-point day, and I switched him out with Tyler Lockett, who left the game shortly after halftime, I think, or before halftime, so with a broken leg. So that didn't work out. But I will say this: at least I know that no matter what lineup I had created, I still would have lost. So I feel a little bit better in that.
Yeah, you can rest easy with that. So on to next year. At least you and I are definitely safe, and we will be back fighting for that championship next year.
That is correct.
To try and unseat Eagles Nation. In FLAFFL Junior, we have a very tight battle. Corey is going up against GA17, and it is a 5-point game right now. GA17 is done, and Corey has Dan Bailey to go. So 150-yard field goal, and Corey will tie up the game. We'll have to see how it goes. I mean, even if the Cowboys rest players, you pretty much don't rest kickers. You don't generally carry two of those. So
and going
I would
into
say
that game last night too, we all thought this was going to end up. I mean, this was going to be a foregone conclusion, and then Denver didn't show up. So now it's a much closer match.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas, as Steve put today, crapped the bed and let GA17 down. So Corey, good shot at winning that championship, and obviously those two guys are safe. Money Martins, much like Steve, was the cellar dweller for most of the season over there in FLAFFL Junior, and he pulled off the big win in the relegation matchup over there. So Money Martins is going to stay in FLAFFL Junior, and M. Silver, our bearded friend who loves labs, he's going down
and hot dogs.
Yes, and hot dogs. That's right. He's going down to Falafel Embryo. In Falafel Embryo, we have the championship is still up for debate there. Dead Duck is taking on Go Pack Go. Go Pack Go is done. Dead Duck has Ezekiel Elliott and Golden Tate left to go, and he is down by 18.9. Now, Kevin, do you think that Zeke gets rested at some point in this game?
I do. Oh, yeah, probably. I don't know. It's really hard to tell, right? I mean, they've said no. They said they like the flow, but at the end of the day, you look at what happened to teams like your Oakland Raiders this week, and you really can't risk it, can you? So, I mean, I think he starts the game. I think 18 points is very attainable for those two guys, especially with Golden Tate. Because the Lions are going to be playing hard, but I do think there's a chance they rest him. I don't think it'll matter. I think Dead Duck's probably going to come out on top there.
Yeah, this will be a fun night tonight in the Falafel chat, because a lot of guys will be in there with championships on the line. So the first person to be eliminated from any one of the Falafel leagues, because as we know, there's no league that is lower than the 3-tier system than Embryo. And the loser of that league is basically eliminated from all Falafel leagues, is going to be Nick Tarr. And S. Ramir, who's a fellow Bostonian.
Yes, I'm very glad to see that.
A New England guy like Kev. He is staving off execution, so to speak, and he's going to remain in the Falafel league. So that's a shame there. Nick Tarr is a guy who's been around for a long time in Falafel, and he is eligible to try and compete for a return spot.
So, look, I just want to make, a lot of people suggested that we kick them down to the ladies' league, but I didn't think that would be fair, because a lot of these ladies are played better than these guys.
Yeah, I would say we have 12 ladies in that league, and at least 12 of them are better than anybody playing in Embryo. So, that brings us over to the ladies' league. So, it was Annie Packers who got it, kind of backdoored her way into the playoffs. I think she would admit to that. She got in with the last spot, and she took on Sam Holt, or Sammy Awesome, as she's known on the Fantasy Life app. And that game is done. Both ladies have no players left to go. And Annie Packers, with a 90.8 to an 81.2 victory, is the first ever Falafel Ladies Champion. So congratulations to you, Annie.
Congratulations, Annie. Nice work. And congratulations to Eagles Nation, by the way. I didn't say that at the beginning, but obviously it was a great match. He had a... he kind of snuck into the playoffs, I think, and but had a good team that turned it on at the right time. So
I'll apologize, Kev, because I played Eagles Nation in the first round, and if I would have beat him like I was supposed to, then you could have lost to me this weekend instead of him.
That would have been much better. Yeah,
because I do believe I outscored you. I think if I the scores,
probably.
I outscored
Although
you
with
this week.
Thielen, maybe not. So who knows how that would have
yes. So, but what we're both doing right now is deflecting the fact that we both lost.
Yes.
We both lost to the champion, yes. And Eagles Nation, while a young man, I believe 18 years old, very good fantasy football player. So,
Sal, the question that everybody really, really wants to know is did my favorite Sal come out on top?
So that game is actually So let's talk about that. You want me to give full disclosure of what my son did, and I want to beat him senseless on Saturday?
Well, yes. Yes.
So I was out shopping Christmas Eve morning, running, doing a lot of last minute Christmas stuff to help out the wife, and at 12:15, I decided to call my son because I figured his lazy ass would finally be up by that time. And I said, "Have you checked your lineups? Are your lineups all set? Do you know about the actives?" And yeah, give me the old brush off. He knows what's going on.
Yo, Dad, don't cramp my style kind of thing.
Yeah, whatever, Dad. I'm in finals and you're not. Back off, type of thing.
Yeah.
So about 5 minutes before I pull up in the front door, my phone goes off. So I pull up in front of the house and I check the text message, and it's my son, and he says, "Left Melvin Gordon in, gonna lose the championship." And I smacked myself in the head. And I couldn't believe it. So I walk in the house and, these are the discussions we're having at my house. So this is 2016. I can't believe you left Gordon in. We're arguing over fantasy football. Instead of, thank God my kid's not a bad kid,
Yeah, that's right.
So he goes, "I didn't get any updates. I got no updates all morning." He goes, "I always get the updates." I said, "Yeah, because they decided yesterday that Melvin Gordon wasn't playing." You got to pay attention. So as it stands right now, he's got a 21-point lead without Melvin Gordon, and both of them have 2 players left to go. So he's got a really good shot at winning this championship without Melvin Gordon. So I hope he does. I hope he pulls it out, and I'm proud of him. If that is the worst thing that I have to yell at my kid over, then I'm in good shape.
Yeah, you're
I'm
doing
really
something
not worried
right there. Then that's for sure.
Well, his mother is. I'm not sure I'm doing anything right, but I'm gonna take it.
I wasn't gonna say that, but sure. All right. Let's move on. We got one other thing that we got to go through before we get to these games, and since we're 16 minutes in already, and Steve would be yelling at us if he was here. Just a reminder, we're going to go through the games. We're going to do it quickly because we have to talk about the FLAFFL Fantasy Playoff Challenge, Sal.
Yes, I finished up all the rules this morning. Our good friend Scott Fish helped us out with a registration form to make it a lot easier for us to collect emails and to mail out the franchises. So here's how it goes. You could go to falafel.com, and right on the front page of falafel.com will be the rules, and below it will be the link. When you go to that link, it'll ask you for your name and your email address. And now we're hosting.
Just to back up for a second.
That's all right. Go ahead.
It would be falafelhouse.com.
What did I say? Falafel?
Falafel.com, yeah. And don't go to falafel.com. That'll take you to some weird flag football place. Just go to falafelhouse.com.
Hold on. Take 2. Action. So go to falafelhouse.com, read the rules, click on the link, and fill in the form where it says your name and your email address. I will receive that information, and I will send you back a link to receive your franchise. We're hosting this on myfantasyleague.com, and it does not allow us to put out a link where you could just click it and join. I have to actually send you back a response to your request, assign you a franchise, and then you can go. So also, it might not be up on the site now, and I will add it. So how this works is obviously there's not a draft. It will be waivers only. So once the NFL playoff teams are decided, so after next Sunday, you could go in, fill out your lineup based on waivers because everybody could have the same players. And once the games kick off on Wild Card weekend, your roster is frozen. That is your roster for the rest of the playoffs, and away we will go. So all the rules are there. I don't want to go through all of them because that would defeat the purpose of having them written down. But you could go there, get in. We have one prize so far and are looking to add more. I can guarantee you we're going to have more than this one. But the winner of the Falafel Playoff Challenge will receive an entry into 2017's Scott Fish Bowl, the biggest fantasy league in the industry, an industry bigwigs type of league. Tons of people in there, people you listen to, people you watch on TV. You're going to get to compete against fantasy football analysts and prove that you're better than them. So this is also 100% free, Kevin, and we mentioned that.
No, we did not, but that's great. And then, while I agree with you, we don't need to go through all the rules. There's a couple things that I think we should point out. For one, like you said, you can pick any player you want. You can only pick one player from each team, from each playoff team. You can only pick one player, so you can't load up on Patriots if you think they're going to just blow through the playoffs. And keep in mind that's your one player for the whole playoffs, right? So you don't change it every week. We don't do anything like that. You're locked in for the whole playoffs. So For example, if you pick Tom Brady, we know that the Patriots have a first-round bye, so you have no Tom Brady for the first week of the playoffs. Keep those things in mind because that's something that if you're playing it for the first time, it's you might not think through those things. So we won't give away too much other strategy because I think Sal likes to win his own tournament, but
Yes, which I did not even enter last year, because last year I did it manually and totaled up the scores myself, and I wanted to leave absolutely no doubt that it was being done correctly. And Colts a 00 GT won it last year, so hopefully he enters and tries to defend his title. Last year he got a $50 NFL Shop gift card, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, and just to be clear too, the system does not allow us to block you from drafting more players from the same team and things like that. So if you do not follow the rules, you will be automatically eliminated after the first round.
Yeah, and I added that to the rules. You'll find those on the front page that when we go at the end, we're going to check who the top teams were, and if one of the teams that finished in a prize position has more than one player on the same team, you just will not be eligible for a prize.
All right, that's about it. We will get you more information as we go through our shows in the next
Steve,
week.
hit the button.
No. Well, we still got to do a couple. We got a little work to do here, Sal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Let's start off with Thursday night's game, the December 22nd, as it were. A few days ago, the Giants played the Eagles. This is what while we were recording our Falafel Festivus episode, which hopefully you guys checked out and enjoyed. If you haven't, definitely go down and go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and download it because it was a lot of fun. It was a great episode for us anyway. All right, but the Giants-Eagles game, the Eagles win this game 24-19. They show a little chink in the armor of the Giants, who had looked pretty solid for the few weeks before. Eli Manning has an okay day in this one as far as yardage is concerned, but he throws 3 interceptions and only 1 touchdown. On the running side of the ball, it continues to be a mess for the Giants. Perkins led the way in touches in this one, 15 to 9 for Rashad Jennings. Perkins had 68 yards, where Jennings only had 44 yards. But Jennings seemed to be a little more involved in the passing game. He gets 5 targets to Paul Perkins 2. So still nothing going on from the New York Giants running back. So if you had these guys at a championship, you probably got there without them. So I don't think you need to worry about it. Odell Beckham gets 11 catches on 20 targets, Sal. 20 targets. 150 yards, no touchdowns. So Sterling Shepard does get the touchdown on 7 catches for 61 yards. So for New York, who'd you have if you were in your championship game or if you were in your second round of your playoffs at this point, you had Odell Beckham, you might have had Sterling Shepard, and maybe you rolled out Eli, and hopefully the yardage was enough to carry you?
Yeah, I would have, in one league, out of my cousin's league, which I was a champion 2 years in a row, and I didn't win the champ. I would have had Odell in the championship, which would have been nice for me. 20 targets is a ton, but Eli passed 63 attempts. 63 attempts in this game. It's just unbelievable. And a third of them still almost went to Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, it's become clear when he had the slow start that he got in Eli's ear, and Eli has been forcing the ball in his direction. I mean, Odell is he's a next level player, and
no question.
He's very impressive. He's a guy I'd be more than happy to have as my first round keeper in any league going forward or in a dynasty league, because he is definitely going to get that attitude figured out and really focus on his craft, and the guy's going to be just really off the hook when that happens.
So we've seen this for 2 years now with the Giants rushing game, where they're just really, Jennings was a little bit better last year, but this is the second year in a row where I don't think they're running the ball very well. If you're in a keeper league, is Paul Perkins on your radar at all?
He is on my radar, because I got to think that this offseason, the Giants are going to go out and do one thing. They are going to focus on offensive line, right? Because Eli's the quarterback. For better or for worse, 3 interceptions, he's the quarterback. You have a premier wide receiver. You have a young wide receiver, in his first year, who looks to have had a very solid rookie season. And you got a good young running back. Perkins is good. He's shown a lot of good catching the ball in the backfield, and in recent weeks he's looked better. And now with 6 more carries than Jennings this week, I think that he'll be the guy going forward. The defense, we've spoken at length about how good the defense is, and they spent a ton of money on that defense in the offseason. So to me, I know offensive linemen aren't growing on trees, and those trees would probably break if they were, but I got to think the Giants are going to definitely draft an offensive lineman and really go out there and try to add one or two guys, because that's what they're missing. That's what separates this team right now from, and even though they beat the Cowboys twice, a Dallas Cowboys, or a team that's going to go on and win a championship this year. As the Giants are in the playoffs, they clinched yesterday or 2 days ago with Tampa's loss, but they're not going to win anything, and it's the offensive line. So Perkins, yeah, because if you have him, he's not going to be a very high keeper, not a very high cost. So he's definitely a guy, if I had him in somewhere in the teens, around in the teens, I'd be keeping him.
Right, so on the other side of the ball, if you had guys that took you into the fantasy playoffs on the Philadelphia side, I don't know how you made it, and hopefully they didn't disappoint you too much, but did basically what they've done all year. Carson Wentz is no longer usable in fantasy, although, I think he did enough in his rookie season to warrant some consideration for next year. We'll see how it all plays out, but 24 for 152 yards with a touchdown and a pick in this one. Ryan Matthews gets the bulk of the carries this time. Screw you, Doug Peterson. We hate you. Darren Sproles does get 7 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown, though. 18 for 46 for Ryan Matthews. On the receiving side of the ball, Zach Ertz, who had been very consistent, maybe you did have him in your playoffs, only gets 2 catches on 2 targets for 33 yards in this one, so he disappointed. Jordan Matthews disappointed with 2 catches for 12 yards. Overall, I just think that there's really just not a lot to love about the Philly offense right now, and you got to hope they figure it out in the offseason.
Yeah, that's something to keep an eye on with Wentz going forward, like you said. That's pretty much it. We nailed it on this game. Let's move it forward, as Steve would say.
Moving along, the next game on my list, which is probably out of order for you, but I think because it's the Patriots, that's what's next for me. We'll talk about the Patriots just destroying the Jets 41-3. As we mentioned, this game was out of hand pretty much. In the first quarter, it was kind of out of hand, and it was only 10-0. But it was 27-0 by the half, and that was pretty much it. Brady throws 27 times for only 214 yards from 3 touchdowns. Really all they needed. LeGarrette Blount scores 2 touchdowns with 50 yards. He had 20 carries, and that was really more just, they rushed the ball a lot. It looks like I have it 40 rushes at this one, which also means they ran almost 70 plays here. So Jimmy Garoppolo gets into this one at I think, what did he take over in the end of the third quarter? It wasn't even the end of the game. I mean even close. He played for a little bit, but he only threw the ball 2 times. Overall, I just, Edelman had a decent game. He got 8 targets, 5 catches, 89 yards. As we talked about many times, that's what he does. His floor is very high, ceiling very low. So, but you get what you pay for with him, right? I mean, and then so the rest of the Patriots offense, I think, are kind of throw-ins, right, from a fantasy perspective, because you may have these guys as a flex play, and like if you had a guy like Malcolm Mitchell, he probably disappointed you a little bit. He only had 3 catches for 29 yards. Hogan only has the 1 catch for 22 yards. Bennett gets 2 catches for 19, but he does get a touchdown. And you had Matt Langle on your bench, right, Sal?
On my bench. He was in my lineup. What are you talking about on my bench?
Of course.
I'm a Langolier. We love him.
Oh, yes, nice. Langolier. 1 catch for 18 yards and a touchdown is his first and only catch in the NFL so far. There was a Michael Floyd sighting for those of you in Keeper or Dynasties or whatever.
Or in leagues where you roster scumbags.
Right. 1 catch for 6 yards on 2 targets. He only played, I think, a handful of snaps in this one, but if you're interested in him going forward, obviously a free agent at the end of the season, I think this is a chance for the Patriots to get an extended look before free agency. So we'll see what happens. And
by the way, I own Floyd probably like 3 weeks.
I was going to say, you own him all over the place. So. Look, on the other side of the ball, Bryce Petty gets hurt. Ryan Fitzpatrick throws 2 picks with no touchdowns, and the rest of the offense was pretty much terrible. I don't know that there's much else to talk about here, Sal. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, there's legitimately nothing else to talk about. So let's go back over to the Patriots. Mitchell was a guy I liked a lot this week. I love the matchup. But you know what? The Patriots had this game in hand less than 15 minutes in. They were up by 3 scores, and that was it. There was nothing really to worry about. I think the most interesting thing this year with the Patriots was that LeGarrette Blount remained a viable weekly starter for a full 16 weeks. And if you were lucky enough to grab him late, hang on to him, being at, nobody really thought that Lewis wasn't going to start the beginning of the year until almost a week before the season. LeGarrette Blount has got to be up there as probably one of the biggest steals this year in fantasy football.
No question about it. What are we at? 16 touchdowns for him now? So something along those lines. Incredible value for where you got him. So I completely agree with you there, Sal. And we will move on because, like we said, there's really not much else to talk about. The Dolphins took on the Bills. They win 34-31 in this one. Kind of an intriguing game and very fantasy relevant if you had these players. Although there's probably not a ton outside of the big names, Jay Ajayi and LaShawn McCoy, that you had here. Going into it, but there was fantasy goodness everywhere, Sal. Tyrod Taylor throws for 3 touchdowns and 329 yards all of a sudden. The last day of the fantasy season for most people, he becomes relevant. LaShawn McCoy has 24 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown. He gets into the act on the passing game. He gets another 5 receptions, only 17 yards, but the receptions help from PPR. And, even Gillislee has 11 carries for 91 yards for those of you in deeper leagues who might be rostering him. Taylor adds another 60 on the ground, too, by the way. Sammy Watkins comes through in this one with 7 catches for 154 yards and a touchdown, played against him in FLAFFL. Charles Clay, a guy that I actually picked up and rostered in a championship game for, I'd been streaming tight ends most of the season, had Ladarius Green going into this one, switched him out for Clay. He comes through for 8 catches, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns, so that worked out well for me, Sal.
Yeah, very good. We discussed that. You and I were saying Jordan Reed or Charles Clay this week, and that was before we knew that Reed was going to be not available for that game.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you had the faith in Jay Ajayi this week because we told you the Bills had been the worst in running back defense over the last 5 weeks, and with another 200-plus yard game, that was pretty clear. I think the most noticeable thing in this game was the Bills' tackling was atrocious. I mean, on Ajayi's 1 touchdown, he just ran through 2 to 3 guys. And Devontae Parker, I don't know if you saw Devontae Parker's touchdown reception.
Yeah.
But 2 different guys had a very good shot at him, like 40 yards out. And he just spun out of them, broke arm tackles. And, once he gets accelerated, you're not catching a guy. And he hit the end zone for a deep touchdown. So, other than that, the Dolphins trailed basically this entire game and then came back and almost lost it late, but then were able to hold off and get into overtime with the field goal and then won it in overtime with the field goal. And I think that the Dolphins are a dangerous team going to the playoffs because they got a lot of young guys, and what young guys don't do necessarily is get scared because they're not smart enough yet to be scared. So you got some good young players on here, and Matt Moore has played really well as the starting quarterback. I mean, he only completed 16 out of 30, but 2 touchdowns, and he let them down, late to win that game. So I'm impressed right now with the Dolphins. They won 9 out of 10, I believe, is what it is. And to me, this is a dangerous team going into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely not a team you want to see on your first round of your playoffs for if you're one of the teams not getting the bye week. I do know, I think they're going to have a hard time getting deep into the playoffs, but I think you're right, Sal. They're definitely going to be a tough out for sure, especially with Matt Moore being such a veteran. I think he'll be composed. So I think that you definitely, and if you are playing into the fantasy playoffs, if your season does go to week 17, I wouldn't play Matt Moore, but I think you got to be comfortable with Jay Ajayi and what he did. Obviously, McCoy and Sammy Watkins and all of those guys are good plays as well. But going against the Patriots next week, going to be a tougher battle for Ajayi and for some of the receivers. The Patriots defense has been playing really, really well, and I think if you're going up against those guys, you got to hope that they're sitting some of their starters. So. To give them a rest at that point, but they may be playing for home field advantage, so they may not. So,
take Matt Moore in the FLAFFL Playoff Challenge. I dare you.
There you go. All right, let's keep moving. I hate the Jacksonville Jaguars, Sal. I really do. I just hate them.
So do the people who live in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I know. They win this game 38-17 against the Titans. Blake Bortles becomes relevant in this one, throwing for 325 yards and a touchdown. He also rushes 3 times for 7 yards. So it's amazing to me.
What are you forgetting there? Blake Bortles caught a 20-yard touchdown pass.
I was just about to say Marquise Lee throws him a 20-yard pass. Jeez, come on.
Blake Bortles, #1 fantasy quarterback next year. The guy's a triple threat.
yeah, exactly. But that's a good question, Sal. I mean, what do you think? We saw the big numbers last year from him. We expected a regression this year. We didn't think it would be as bad as it was, but it was terrible for most of the season. What are you doing with Bortles next year? Is he fantasy irrelevant, or are you taking a flyer on him somewhere?
I don't think he's irrelevant, but I do think he'll fall into QB2 territory. He will not be a guy who I would take as my legit starter. You know, in a lot of the leagues we play in, and as a more veteran fantasy players, we tend to go into the season with one quarterback, and then when we get to that point where a bye week will come up, we'll try to fill that spot in. So Bortles is not a guy I could trust going in as my lead dog, but it's going to be interesting to see who the coach is there next year, who the offensive coordinator is there next year. What is the game plan going to be? And you know, let's pay attention in the offseason and in the mini camps and training camps and what they do to bring in there, because he has weapons. I mean, there's guys on his team that can make things happen.
You mean like Allen Robinson with 9 receptions for 147 yards since they realized he's the best player on the team and they might actually want to move him around a little bit?
Yeah, this was something. This is something why I told a lot of people, don't drop Allen Robinson and don't drop DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins wasn't, one you needed to worry about in hindsight, but dropping a guy like Allen Robinson, somebody could have picked him up and played him against you, and then all year, you curse this guy, and then he comes back and kicks you right in the ding-ding with a 9 for 147. So hopefully you didn't drop him. I don't know that you started him, because I can't blame you if you didn't. But, it'll be interesting to see going forward. I think that Bortles will get every opportunity to be the quarterback next year, unless Tom Coughlin is the coach, because rumor is he doesn't like him.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think Marone's going to get the first shot at being the head coach there, so I think that they will stick with him and give him a year. But on the other side of the ball, I hope you didn't play any Tennessee Titans in a championship, because they were all terrible, thanks to that vaunted Jacksonville Jaguars defense, Sal. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there.
All over that defense all year, and specifically the tight end defense. And while Walker got a touchdown, he only had 3 catches for 23 yards.
And he did. That touchdown came late, too. They had shut him down the majority of the game. But the defense also scored a touchdown in this one, just to throw it out there. I'm just saying, they're better than you think.
So the big story is what, though?
Obviously, Marcus Mariota leaves this game with an ankle injury, I think is what they're saying at this point. Looked pretty bad, or actually, no, it was a broken fibula. This is a fibula day, right?
Was he fibula boy too? I think, my man.
Yeah, I think there were 3 of them.
Carr had the fibula.
Yeah, I think there were 3 of them this week. I think it was him, it was Derek Carr, and who was the other one? We'll get to it, I'm sure. So,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Derek Carr.
Mariota leaves this game. The offense can't get anything going. DeMarco Murray doesn't look good. 14 for 42. Derrick Henry 4 for 13. Neither of them really involved in the passing game, because there was no passing game. They only throw for 205 yards total. 124. That's for Matt Castle, who still looks like he can't play the game of football. So, if you're going next week and you got Titans, I would be concerned with them. So.
Yeah, I mean, with Mariota, what was interesting that came out today is his seems to be worse, because I know David Carr's was like 5 to 6 week recovery, and Mariota's is 4 to 5 months.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something that could affect him at the beginning of next season. So he had an absolutely fantastic season, top 10, close to a top 5 fantasy QB this year, which I don't think anybody legitimately expected. And it's very sad when you see it happen to anybody, but young guys with bright futures, definitely sad.
All right, let's keep moving along. The Vikings and the Packers. The Packers win this one 38-25. Jordy Nelson is the story in this one, because he is phenomenal. 9 catches, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I'm guessing he won a lot of championships for people this week.
Probably not Beatapoo because
No.
he traded him.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and then didn't make the championship.
That's right. That's right. And of course, Jordy Nelson has his best game of the season because he was facing off against Steve. Steve would be mad if we didn't say that. Aaron Rodgers also has a great day, 347 yards and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. So he probably rode you to a championship as well. Not much else in this one, though. I mean, no one else really to talk about. Devontae Adams gets another score, but 4 catches for 44 yards. Richard Rodgers catches a touchdown, and then Jordy gets the 2, as we talked about. On the other side of the ball, hopefully you took a chance and started Adam Thielen. Personally, Sal, I'm going to give you my thoughts on it because I benched him, as I said. My thought was I was going to play him unless Diggs played. Because obviously Diggs came into this game questionable, and we've seen it throughout the season. Thielen was less relevant when Diggs was on the field. Still a decent flex, but less so. And, of course, Diggs played. He gets 4 catches for 29 yards. Thielen, though, who was on my bench, breaks out 12 catches for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. He couldn't do anything wrong in this game, and that's with Sam Bradford throwing the ball.
Yeah, I was sad to see him do that after hearing that he was on your bench. But, listen, Adam Thielen is another guy. Let's see how this goes next year because they do have some young wide receivers that they drafted. Obviously, we know about who they drafted in the first round this year, so Laquan Treadwell, and we're expecting him to get in there next year. So Thielen's a guy who, we go all the way back to the beginning of the season, you and I both were on this guy. I mean, I had mentioned in one of my articles that this guy played, that guy played, and the guy who led the targets and receptions is Adam Thielen. And he, second half of the year, became a basically a must-start wide receiver, too. If you look back at the numbers, the guy was in double digits on a weekly basis, especially in PPR leagues. So, the Vikings will be back next year. They suffered some injuries, and who knows? Let's see who the quarterback's going to be next year. If what's his name?
Teddy Bridgewater.
It's been gone so long. The Bridge. If the Bridge is back, Big Teddy B, and this offense has the weapons. I mean, Rudolph is a guy who's there every other week. This wasn't one of his weeks because obviously, Kevin, where was he?
6 for 53, no touchdowns. So,
and he was probably off, leading Sanders.
Well, obviously, yes, I'm sorry. You were going for the joke. Yes, not the yards. Yes.
You were beating that joke to death, and now you don't want any part of it?
Well, it's after Christmas. That's it. Once December 26th, I shut it down, man. So, all right, we will continue on. I agree with you though that a lot of talent on this offense. Another team that is in desperate need of an offensive line, and if they can get that, will look very good going into next season. So we'll see. Moving along, we get to the Chargers and the Browns. The Browns finally get a win. They win this one 20-17. I'm not expecting too many people who have been in their championships or in the middle of a 2-week championship or anything started Isaiah Crowell, but he gets 16 for 54 and 2 touchdowns in this one. RG3 was useless, 164 yards, no touchdowns. He gets 42.
He was on a championship team this week, though.
He was. The Eagles Nation did use him to beat me, sadly. Yeah, he has Robert Griffin, and he's still going to score 150 points. There was nothing I could have done. So, I think Terrell Pryor, another guy that may have been on your roster if you're in the championships. He only gets 3 catches for 36 yards. Not a great day for him. I do think better days are ahead for him, though. I think you can certainly count on him going forward. I'm curious to see what happens with him in free agency, if he stays in Cleveland or not, because he's a talented guy. I mean, bounced around a lot, was a quarterback, now a receiver. He's a good receiver, so hopefully he lands in a good spot. On the other side of the ball, you may have had Phillip Rivers. Hey, maybe you started Melvin Gordon and still might win a championship. So, but really not a lot here. They get Gates involved here. 8 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. So he's a guy that could have helped people. Tyrell Williams gets a touchdown as well, 4 for 64. That's kind of been his stat line for the most part throughout the second half of the season. Tyrell Williams is a guy. I'm curious what your thoughts are on him going forward, Sal.
Yeah, he's the one guy I'd like to point out in this game that he's been getting a touchdown essentially every week, and he's had some big games missed in there. But like you're saying, he's generally 4 to 5 catches, upwards of 75 yards a week and a touchdown, which is solid wide receiver 2 numbers. But he does have big playability. This is a guy we brought up at the beginning of the season when Keenan Allen's injury happened, and I'll be interested to see where he's going forward because there aren't a lot of other young wide receivers, like any up-and-coming guys. They did put money out there for Travis Benjamin this year, and he did have one big play in this game. He finished with 3 for 75, but he got tackled close to the goal line, which led to Gates' touchdown. I believe it was a 1-yard touchdown pass, which went to the theory that Kevin had said a couple of weeks ago that they will try to get to him when they're in the inside the 5 or inside that red zone because he is going for that touchdown record. But, yeah, Tyrell Williams is going to be an interesting guy. Does he go back into obscurity next year, or does he become a guy you're going to be drafting as a wide receiver 3?
Yeah, he's interesting to me. I don't think he's going back into obscurity. I wasn't that high on him this year, but I do think, they have Benjamin. They paid him some money. He'll still be on the outside. I do think that if you put Keenan Allen back in this, and you have Keenan Allen running the, essentially the Jarvis Landry role, the slot receiver who's going to be, working the middle of the field because that's what he does. He's you catch volume guy. And then you put Benjamin as a speedster on the outside. You got Tyrell Williams, who's a big, target who can run. So I think he's necessary. I think they may have 3 viable fantasy options for wide receiver next year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that.
This is another situation where who's going to be the coach next year?
Yep.
Who's going to be the coordinator, and will they be playing in LA? So this is the franchise in major transition as well.
Absolutely. All right, we'll continue on here. The Redskins and the Bears. The Redskins blow out the Bears. The Washington football team blow out the Bears in this one, 41-21. Kirk Cousins, not a particularly great day, but pretty good, I guess. He does enough. He gets 2 rushing touchdowns, which is, they count for 6, right? So that helps you. Only throws 270 yards and only throws the 1 touchdown. So, but overall, I think he ends up in the top 5 in quarterbacks this week. So he's helping our friend Steve avoid relegation, which is great. Other guys here, Robert Kelly gets 19 carries for 76 yards, but he doesn't get in the end zone. He does get 2 catches on 3 targets, so at least he was involved a little bit. And then the receivers for Washington, Deshaun Jackson, 5 catches, 114 yards. Pierre Garçon, 4 catches for 94 yards. And, Crowder all the way back down there at 1 catch for 3 yards, Sal. What happens?
I don't know. He's just another guy.
Just another guy. See,
he turned back into a pumpkin.
That's right.
The last couple of weeks of the season. So
yeah.
If he helped carry you to the fantasy playoffs, he absolutely 100% let you down in them.
No question about it. Chris Thompson gets the touchdown here, both rushing and receiving. So that helps probably no one because I doubt too many people had him in the lineup. On the other side of the ball, Sal, Jordan Howard is a stud. You were on him early. I think that he looked great in this one. He left briefly with an injury, but he did come back. 18 carries, 119 yards. The kid's just good.
Yeah, I'm excited to have him as a keeper, a really good value keeper in FLAFFL, which means I'll be able to hold him for probably pretty much most of his career at this point, unless I get a good offer. Yeah, I've said it a bunch of times. The guy breaks big plays and he makes things happen. He does it against any offense. I mean, the Redskins have not been good at defending the run this year, but he has been good at picking up yardage against absolutely anybody. Langford does get the touchdown. What had happened is Howard came out and Langford was in, and there was a big pass play down the field, and they were basically right inside the 2-3 yard line, and Langford was on the field, and they just handed him the ball, and he went right in. So
yeah.
I think interesting going forward from here is where will Langford be next year, because I don't think it will be in Chicago, and I think Langford can play in this league, and I think he will be fighting for a starting position somewhere else, but it will not be here in Chicago. And then, of course, my boy Cam Meredith.
Yeah.
9 for 135 and a touchdown. He finished his last 2 weeks. He's got one more game left, but fantasy wise, weeks 15 and 16 with great efforts. And here's another guy. Does Alshon Jeffrey come back, or do they think they have enough in Meredith to not have to sign Jeffrey and move on from the injuries and a big price tag that's going to come with having him there next year?
Honestly, I think they have to, right? I think you got to move on from Alshon. You got Cameron Meredith who shows he can do it. You still have some faith in Kevin White, I guess. You kind of have to. So I think for me, if I'm a rebuilding team like the Bears, because clearly Matt Barkley is not the answer with 5 interceptions in this one, I think you have to let Alshon go because he's just not going to help you next year. So Alshon does get 5 catches, 92 yards, so hopefully he helped some people in fantasy. But that's about it for this one. So we will continue.
Can I ask you a question, Kev, before we move on?
Absolutely.
Cameron Meredith or Malcolm Mitchell, I could keep only one as a 16-round keeper for next year.
Both a 16-round keeper?
But to be honest with you, I think you drafted Mitchell. So Mitchell and you dropped him. So I think Mitchell's more like a 13-round keeper. But, essentially
it's the
late.
same, yeah. Sure. Yeah. I honestly, this is one I think you have to wait and see what happens in the offseason, right? Because if they keep Alshon, if they signed Alshon, that really limits Meredith a little bit in my mind, because Kevin White will come back at some point. So, then you're spreading the touches out against the 3 big wide receivers, right? So I think you kind of have to wait and see on that one. But if let's say they don't sign Alshon, I'd probably stick with Meredith. I think Mitchell's great, but I don't know that I can trust any Patriots wide receiver that's not the slot wide receiver to be even a consistent wide receiver too.
I'm pretty sure you just want me to let him go so you can draft him again. But okay, we'll move on.
100%. All right, let's keep moving. The Falcons beat up on the Panthers. 33-16 was the score in this one. Matt Ryan looks good again. 277 for 2 touchdowns. He ran the ball for 9 yards as well. In this one, is the running backs. Take your pick as far as I'm guessing you start. You probably started both of them if you depending on who you had. Tevin Coleman gets 9 carries for 90 yards. He does get the touchdown. Freeman probably let you down, 13 for 53, no touchdown. But then you run over to the receiving side. Freeman gets 8 receptions for 35 yards, so he makes it up for you in PPR. Coleman gets 3 for 45. Julio Jones, another soft day, but coming off an injury, I'm not sure what we would really expected out of him. 4 catches for 60 yards. He probably hurt people that if they stuck with him. Because that's not really the Julio Jones production you need if you're in the championship. But if you did get there despite him, maybe he was only you weren't counting on him as much. Taylor Gabriel really screwed me. 3 catches for 15 yards, not very good there. So overall the Atlanta offense is still really good. Their defense plays better than I expected this season, and I think you're going to look to all these guys next year as valuable fantasy commodities.
Yeah, I think the defense came on as the season went on. Beginning of the year, they gave up as many points and yards as they were getting. So they've defended much better second half of the year. And my concern here is does Matt Ryan regress next year or go back to who he was, or has Matt Ryan turned a corner here? And I think he's an MVP candidate for the NFL this year, and he's been a top 2 to 3 fantasy quarterback at the worst throughout the entire season. He puts up another 20-point effort in this game, and it'll be very interesting to see if he can sustain going forward.
Yeah, I think it really makes a difference as to where I'm blanking on the offensive coordinator's name, but he'll be a prime head coaching candidate this year. And if he does take a job and move somewhere else, you got to wonder if that's going to affect Matt Ryan. So that'll be something to keep in mind during the offseason. On the other side of the ball, Sal, what do you do with Cam Newton going forward? Because he really looked bad for the majority of the season. I will say this, just before you get to your thoughts. He seems like the type that is such a pouty little bastard sometimes that, once the season started getting out of hand for him, I really think that he kind of threw in the towel. That's just my own personal thoughts, and I would be nervous about that going forward. But if they bounce back and have a decent season next year, I wouldn't be worried about him from a fantasy perspective.
I'm pretty sure that goes back to last year's Super Bowl. No, falling down backwards on the field and rolling around on the field when a play went wrong, when the defense was on the field, how he reacted in the post-game press conference, getting up and walking out.
He's just a baby.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate because, the guy's talent is immense. He's got great size and ability and speed, and he just does things that most other quarterbacks cannot do. But personality is part of the package, and if you cannot handle it when the chips are down, people aren't going to want to be there for you when you're riding high. So he's a guy who was taken very high in a lot of fantasy drafts this year, or kept with high values from last year because of what he did the performance he put forth last year. But this just lends credence to the fact that you should not draft quarterbacks early.
Yeah.
There's not a single quarterback that I could imagine this season that was really worth you taking with a first and second round pick.
Nope.
The guy who probably was the most valuable to anybody didn't play the first 4 weeks of the season, right? Tom Brady was probably the most valuable quarterback in fantasy this year, outside of probably Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan was the guy who was taken very late. And I'll give Kevin credit on that. Kevin was on Matt Ryan in the preseason, and I think that we talked him out of it a little bit.
Yeah, you did. You made me backtrack.
He really was. So we'll give you credit on that, Kevin, because I remember that. Ben Roethlisberger did not turn out to be number one.
No,
but Matt Ryan came pretty damn close, and it was a much lower value. So
absolutely.
But Cam Newton going forward is a guy. Next year, he's I think he still is a top 5 fantasy quarterback, but probably closer to 5 than 1 as he was this year.
Yeah. And the good news on Newton is that he seems to be in this every other pattern. So if he has a down year this year, he might see an uptick next year. So not a whole lot else in this game to talk about as far as Kelvin Benjamin finally looks relevant. Although I doubt anyone who had him, if they did get to the championship with him, you probably liked the 63 yards and a touchdown, but it was probably just a bonus for you at that point. So. All right, let's keep moving because we have to fly through the rest of these games, Sal. So what we're going to do, the rest of the games, since you and I seem to talk quite a bit, we're just going to talk about a really quick couple of highlights, right? So the Colts and the Raiders. We'll start with this one, and I want to gloss over
the highlights.
I want to gloss over this one because mostly you'll cry. Derek Carr obviously goes down with the broken leg as well. He did throw 3 touchdowns and 228 yards before he left, so he's having a hell of a game. Tough hit for your Raiders there, Sal. That's going to be tough. Matt McGloin was a somewhat serviceable quarterback when he played for a few games a few years back, but obviously not enough to keep them from drafting Derek Carr. So what do you think about him going forward? Just really quickly.
I'm not excited about it. I think that the Raiders weren't going to go deep into playoffs as it was anyway, because I think they had a lot of holes with their defense, gave up big plays. So I don't think McGloin is the answer. It's sad. I look forward to Carr coming back next year and us making a run.
All right, so the Raiders, you still can, after a few weeks of being able to trust Latavius Murray, they go back to their committee. DeAndre Washington gets 12 carries, Rashard gets 6, and Murray gets 15. They none of them top 100 yards, although Washington gets 99 yards and a touchdown, and 2 touchdowns, I should say, so on no one's team. Which
definitely not, because the only 2 guys that have been playing are Murray and Rashard, right?
Yeah,
nobody.
Exactly.
There's nobody. I dare you out there to send us a tweet at Falafel House on Twitter and show us that you had DeAndre Washington in your starting lineup this week.
No one. Absolutely. Andrew Luck has a decent game, pretty much an Andrew Luck type game. He's been doing this, pretty much all season. 2 touchdowns, 288 yards. He rushes for a touchdown as well, which kicks up the yardage a little bit. But that's about it. T.Y. Hilton, I should say, is very good. Continues his stretch, 4 catches, 105 yards. We would like to see him get in the end zone. Moncrief gets another touchdown, and that's about
touchdown,
it.
Crief.
That's it. So, all right, let's keep moving. The Saints. This was actually an interesting game. I did get to watch a bunch of this one because I was at my in-laws like you, Sal, and they did not have Red Zone, so I did have to watch the game that was on, and this was the one that was on.
That's correct. That was the one that was on over here also. I watched the end of this one at my in-laws.
So 31-24 for the Saints over the Buccaneers, which hurts the Buccaneers from a playoff standpoint. I'm not sure if they're actually eliminated yet, but it's definitely going to be a lot of work to get in now. Drew Brees has a light day for him, throws 299 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, he just did not live up to these 2 Tampa Bay matchups, and I think it's because the Tampa Bay defense got better. But, for all those people that they're licking their chops, so to speak, Steve, they were, over these 2 matchups in the playoffs for New Orleans against Tampa Bay, it just did not go as planned. If you had Mark Ingram, though, Sal, you were pretty happy. 90 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Mark Ingram was the guy I drafted in a lot of leagues this year. I thought that he was going to make the leap up to a solid weekly RB1. And he dealt with injuries, and then he got benched because of 1 fumble. And so he didn't have the overall year that we had hoped. But he has absolutely displayed the ability to be an RB1. And I hope going forward next year that they give this guy the chance to be the lead dog. I mean, he out carried Hightower by 10 in this game, but if he could get 20 plus instead of 18, the guy I think he's got stud potential written all over him.
I agree with you. Let's see. Cooks and Thomas both get 98 yards, but Cadet vultures the receiving touchdown. On the other side of the ball, it was kind of a forgettable day for most of these guys. Mike Evans, 97 yards and a touchdown. You always start Mike Evans anyway, and he did exactly what you probably, he didn't go off, but he had a nice solid day. And, the surprise benching of Doug Martin led to Jaquiz Rogers being relevant, although I doubt if anyone played him because if you were like me, you cut him a few weeks ago when he wasn't getting any run. So
was he available, Kev, for you to pick up? As I know that you were able to pick up Alfred Blue on Saturday, right? And
he was. I think he was available. I went with Blue instead just because I still didn't know what Sims, what kind of split they'd have between him and Sims. So I went with Blue because it looked like Blue was going to get the lion's share there, and actually that would have worked out because I think Blue had a better day, but Rogers was still available. But
so what does it say, right? If you have Doug Martin in a keeper league, he's an absolute let go this year, and I will say that I don't expect Doug Martin to be back in Tampa next year. I know they gave him the big contract, but I have a feeling that they are going to cut their ties with Doug Martin.
Sounds like it, although another guy who's on an every other schedule, so we'll see. The Seahawks and the Cardinals, man, this one was tough. I did see the end of this game as well because they switched over to this game because it was, there was a couple minutes left. Cardinals win 34-31 on a last-second field goal. The Seahawks kicker, who looked like he was going to be in for a rough day because he missed the extra point, left them tied at 31, although it didn't end up mattering because Arizona marches down the field with a minute left and kicks a field goal. So fantasy-wise, if you had Russell Wilson and had the balls to play him after his couple of duds, he threw 350 and 4 touchdowns, and he ran for another 36 yards as well. So great day for him. Luckily for Steve, I think we would be we could potentially be on suicide watch if it hadn't been for Kirk Cousins having such a good day as well, because he did bench Wilson as he said he would for Cousins.
Yeah, it's been back and forth for Steve, and seemingly he has played the wrong guy
every time.
Week. And Wilson did outscore Cousins by about 4 points this week, but when you're getting up to what they both scored, which was 29 and change and 33 and change in the FLAFFL scoring, it worked out well for Steve-O.
I'm going to say right now, if somehow Bailey does get 17 points, not Bailey. He has the other kicker. Prater. If Prater does get 17 points somehow, it's gonna be rough in there because he's gonna know that it would have been Wilson that would have saved him. So
it's a pretty good chance that this podcast doesn't get edited or posted if that happens.
Exactly.
So all this might be for nothing.
Right. Baldwin, obviously the big day. We talked about, 13 for 171 and a touchdown. Jimmy Graham gets in the end zone. Paul Richardson and Jermaine Kearse also get in the end zone. On the other side of the ball, J.J. Nelson, Sal, you gotta look at him going forward now. Only 3 receptions. He did get 7 targets, but he had 132 yards and a touchdown. The guy can just flat out fly.
Yeah, so much like you, Kev, it seems like we're on the same schedule. The same thing happened with me. They played this game at the end, and when they came to this game, there was a receiver with the last name of Golden that was in on a play, and I said to my son, they were 5 deep at wide receiver coming into the season. Where are these guys? We know that Jerron Brown is out. Michael Floyd's a jackass. And John Brown is out there, but he's not been 100%. But J.J. Nelson, over the last few weeks, has taken the opportunity and, for lack of a better term, run with it. And he makes big plays. He's a quick, smaller wide receiver. And, he's a guy who's got to be on the radar next year with Floyd out of there. And Fitzgerald possibly retiring. This is a guy who's going to have to be on the radar. You probably got him very late in drafts or picked him up on the waivers this year. So he's got great keeper potential if you watch the offseason and see how it's going to be used.
Agreed. Not much to talk about with David Johnson. The guy rolls on 95 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, another 4 catches for 41 yards. He's just a stud. Let's move on. Let's talk about the 49ers and the Rams, I guess. Not a lot to talk about in this game, so we can breeze through it pretty quickly. Sal, anything particularly jump out for you at this one? Gurley finally had an okay day, but against the San Francisco defense, you still would have expected more.
Yeah, I guess you would have expected more, but I believe he gets a 16-point day in FLAFFL scoring. So if you made it to your championship with him on your roster, then he at least came through and put forth with what is an acceptable day. I would say that a guy who we discussed specifically before the players started was Colin Kaepernick. He has a very nice day with 266 and 2 touchdowns, and then he ends up scoring a rushing touchdown to finish with 26 plus at the quarterback position, which we always say the magic number for quarterbacks is 20. So if you could get upwards in the middle of the 20s, that's a really nice day. And I think what most people take away from this is the injury to Carlos Hyde, a good young running back who, hasn't been able to live up to his full potential because of that team that's around him. But we'll have to see how this injury sets him back going into next season, because I think that's the type of injury that takes about a year to recover from.
Yeah, it's too bad for him. We will definitely keep an eye on that because, probably a second or third round pick next year going into the year if he hadn't been injured. So, all right, speaking of injuries, the Cincinnati Bengals decided to sit A.J. Green, which hurt a lot of people. At least you knew about it early, but sounds like upper management got involved with this one and told him basically you're not going to play even though you're healthy. I think it's the smart move when you see what happens to guys like Carlos Hyde. And they subsequently lose to the Texans 12-10 in a barn burner. Andy Dalton, like you talked about, actually had a decent day, but he's got no one to work with. Alfred Blue, as we mentioned, 21 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Tom Savage is forgettable in this one, and he did not help make DeAndre Hopkins relevant either. Outside of that, I don't know what else to talk about here. Eifert sat as well, I believe, Sal. So,
Yeah, none of the weapons were there for Cincinnati.
Nothing.
Legitimately no weapons. Like we said, Jeremy Hill started the game and saw no action. Again, it wasn't a game I didn't see the whole first half of this game. So by the time I did get home, I didn't see him. He wasn't in the game. I saw nothing but Burkhead. So, Jeremy Hill will be a guy next year I will definitely skew down a bit.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on since there's nothing else to talk about there. The Steelers and the Ravens. Steelers pull out the win in this one again last second, 31-27. Roethlisberger has a pretty good day, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does throw 2 picks. So if you have some serious penalties for picks, that might have hurt you. Le'Veon Bell does what Le'Veon Bell does, which is carry the ball 20 times for 122 yards and a touchdown, and he chips in for 3 and 15 on through the air with another touchdown. He's just so good. Antonio Brown has 10 receptions, 96 yards, and that touchdown was amazing. The reach over the goal line was brilliant, just because it just shows you the smarts that he has to get that over there and not lose the ball and just break the plane.
Who started Xavier Grimble in this game? Anybody?
We've talked about him on this podcast before, Sal. So
we definitely have. But with Ladarius Green coming in, he kind of was a back burner guy, and with Green injured this week, you figured it would be more of the Jesse James show, which it was. James was 4 for 49, and Grimble caught the 1 pass, but it was for a 20-yard touchdown. Like you said, very impressive touchdown by Antonio Brown. Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson, to me, are just they're the 2 guys you need to choose from next year as the number 1 and 2 fantasy players. They just do so much on both sides of the ball and put up ridiculous yardage and touchdown totals, and they can do everything. They're the best players on the field when the game kicks off, regardless of who they're going against. The guy who I pointed out a couple weeks ago, I said you're not going to see a guy like this again for a long time. They just don't make him like that, is Steve Smith Sr. And he goes, he puts up over 19 points. He has 7 for 79, a touchdown. And the guy he spins out of tackles and makes big runs. He's not a big guy, but he's tough as nails. And he backs up everything that whatever trash he talks, he backs it up. So you got to respect a guy like that. And it's going to be sad to see him go. And like I said, they don't make him like that.
Absolutely. On the rushing side of the ball for the Ravens, Kenneth Dixon, Terrence West split 12 carries for Dixon, 10 for West. Dixon is the far more productive back with 57 yards versus West's 27. So hopefully you will continue to see Dixon going forward. He is the guy that you need to worry about for going in for a keeper and for next year.
Well, here's another game, right, where I got to this one in the second half because that's when I showed up at Mama's house for Christmas. And I got the second half, and it's on in the background. I made sure it was on in the kitchen TV that she has hanging there, and the fullback was the guy on the last drive, and I said it had to be because of pass protection that they had him in there. But what an amazing touchdown by this guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how the hell do you say his last name?
Juszczyk.
Yeah. That was an impressive touchdown. I thought Baltimore had it won, but they left a little too much time on the clock, and they drove right down on them. So.
Yeah. All right, finally, last game last night, 33-10 for the Kansas City Chiefs pull off the win over the Denver Broncos, who looked absolutely dreadful on offense. They just can't do anything. None of their running backs were very good or effective. Forsett does get a touchdown, but he only gets 11 yards. Booker only gets 27 yards. He looked a little better in the passing game with 6 catches and 44 yards. No one else in the passing game looked good at all. Sanders gets you 1 catch for 26 yards. Thomas gets you 3 catches, but only 20 yards. And Trevor Siemian, I know they keep saying he looks good and they like him a lot. I can't see how you
Who
possibly...
said that?
Well, I mean, people have said that he's doing... There were reports.
17 for 43.
Listen, Sal, there were reports coming out before this game that said that he's done enough to earn consideration for the starting job. I think it's crap. I don't think there's any way you could start him.
Yeah, there's no way Denver goes forward with him as the starting quarterback next year. And I don't think Lynch is ready. I think Denver knows they have a made-for-the-playoffs team with that defense and these offensive weapons. So if it's not Romo, it's some other quarterback in there next year. But I think that we all believe it's going to be Romo.
All right, and on the Kansas side, I agree. On the Kansas City side of the ball, Dontari Poe throws a touchdown. So you had him in your lineup, right?
It was like a jump shot. It was like a jump shot touchdown.
It was a good gadget play, to be honest with you. Alex Smith has a decent day, 244, 1 touchdown. He also runs in a touchdown there and gets you 46 on the ground. So a good day for him. Tyreek, the freak, 6 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown. That's right, I said carries. Didn't do a lot in the receiving game. In fact, he did nothing, although he did get targeted 5 times. But he continues to just show his speed and overall athletic ability in the plays that he makes. He's a guy you're going to have to watch going forward as well. And your guy Spencer Ware, not so much on this one, 13 for 62, but that's about it.
Yeah, he had a couple of catches for 20 yards also. But the guy who I would say the last 6 weeks of the season, the best tight end in football has been Travis Kelce. I don't think it's close.
Yeah, no question about it. He gets you, 11 catches, 160, and a touchdown here? So
yeah, he took a tight end screen, 80 yards for a touchdown, and there were people in his way. He outran them. He made moves to get around them, and he took off. I mean, this is a guy – I traded for him, late in the season in FLAFFL, and his keeper value is probably like a 3rd round, but I'm considering it.
You might have to.
He's a game-breaking player.
Yeah, they were calling him Baby Gronk at one point, and the way he blocks, the way he is used in the passing game, you gotta think he's on that. Not quite as good as Gronk, I think, but he's also on the field. So
I don't know that he's as tough as Gronk. I think he's definitely faster than. I think he's a better athlete than Gronk, personally. I don't think he's a better tight end.
Right. No, I hear you.
But I think he's a better athlete, and he could do things that Gronk can't do, and vice versa.
All right, so Sal, that's it. We've gone through them all, and because we are way over on time, you're going to get to your final thought right away.
Oh, and I didn't prep, Steve. I'm sorry. So check us out on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on all the social media sites at FLAFFL House, and you can check out our weekly start-sit articles and our rankings and all that good stuff, which you probably don't need now because we're going into week 17. But FLAFFLhouse.com is where we put out all our stuff, and we'll be doing stuff throughout the off season and keeping you guys informed on everything. Other than that, guys, have a great week. If you're off this week with your kids and enjoying the holiday season, be safe and enjoy.
Great. And I will say that you can also follow me on Twitter at Wally Central. You can follow Sal on Twitter at Lido Sal. You can follow Steve, even though he's not here, on Twitter, as at Sid Skeet. And definitely download the Fantasy Life app and check us out all on there in the FLAFFL House chat. We will be there tonight talking about the game going on and rooting all of you on for your championships if this is your championship week. And if not, if you're still playing, we will be back. We are not going to have, just a reminder, we're not going to have our normal Wednesday release this week because we are releasing one on Tuesday for you. So we won't have that, but we will have our normal Friday release. So we will be back with you on Friday. And until then, I guess I hit the button.
Hit it.